Shalom, we're now continuing our limud of Shmuel Beis, and we're in the middle of Avshalom coming to Yerushalayim, and the last thing we read was the shameful behavior that on the advice of Achisofel, Avshalom had relations with the 10 Pilagshim of David. Let me just mention something I didn't mention last time, that this actually was a fulfillment of what Hashem told David because of the sin of David and Bathsheba, that evil will arise out of your house, and that your own son will rebel against you, and your wives and your Pilagshim will be taken away from you, and that was Mekuyim with what Avshalom did. So now we continue, that Achisofel now gives another bit of advice. Vayomer Achisofel el Avshalom. It's time to attack. It's time to finally finish it and kill your father. Evchara na shnei masor elef ish. Let us assemble an army of 12,000 people. V'yakuma, and I will rise up. V'erdeva. So Achisofel is volunteering to be the general. I will rise up and I will pursue Acharei David alayla in the night. V'yavay elav, we will come upon him, or I will come upon him in the middle of the night. V'hu yageya rufei yadayim, and he'll be exhausted and weak. V'charadati also, and this will be a sudden attack, meaning we can come in stealth, although it's not clear to me why a 12,000 man army would be undetectable, but we will come suddenly. V'nas kalam asharitai, and all of the people with David are going to run away in fright, and he will be exposed and left alone. Achisofel seems to be describing, there'll be 12,000 soldiers, but I will kill the king myself. And then, once David is gone, Achisofel says, V'yashiva kala melech, I will bring everybody back, even the loyalists, even Shevet Yehuda that is loyal to David. I will bring back to you. Kashuv hakol ha'ish asher tamavakesh, because everybody will come back once we get the man that you want to get, David. Kol ha'am yiyeh shalom. Everyone will come back in peace. So Achisofel is advocating, although I'm not sure how this would work exactly, a stealth attack, a surprise attack. Vayishar hadavar b'yeinei Avshalom u'v'yeinei kol ziknei Yisrael. Avshalom thought that was a good idea, and the other elders that were with him thought that was a good idea. And of course, we read at the end of the preceding perek that the Eitzah of Achisofel was considered to be as good as a Navi or the Urim V'Tumim. But Avshalom does have a second advisor, and that is David's friend Hushai Ha'arki, and he wants to know, what does Hushai think? Vayomer Avshalom krana gam leChushai Ha'arki. Let's call Hushai from the city of Erech. V'nishma'a ma bepiv gamhu. Let's hear his opinion. Let's have a second opinion. Vayavai Hushai el Avshalom. And Hushai is brought to Avshalom, or comes to Avshalom. V'yemer Avshalom elav leimar. Kadavar hazeh diber Achisofel. Achisofel gave the advice of a stealth attack with a limited army. Hanaseh devarei. Should we do what he says? Imayin, or we shouldn't do what he says? Atah daber. Tell me what your opinion is. So, remember, Hushai is really working for David. Vayomer Hushai el Avshalom. Loi toiva ha'etza asher yoatz Achisofel b'pam hazais. As wise and as great as Achisofel is, this time his advice is not good. And now Hushai explains. Vayomer Hushai, ata yadat es avicha. He's speaking to Avshalom. You know your father, V'yasanashav, and his people. Ki gibayrim hema. They are very strong and courageous warriors. Umari nefesh hema. And when they are embittered and when they feel trapped, they are like dov shakol basadeh, like a bear that is losing its children in a field, right? You try to take away the little bears, the mother bear is going to fight with ferocity. If your father feels trapped by this surprise attack, They're going to fight back in a way that will overwhelm your little army. Avicha ish milchama, and besides, your father is a man of war. He has fought many, many wars. V'lo yolin es ha'am. He will not let the people sleep somewhere else, meaning he will not let them leave. They're going to fight together. And even right now, you don't even know where he is. He's hiding in one of the pits, or some other place. As soon as an army starts attacking and somebody gives David the word, and as soon as there will be the beginning of any casualty in your army, because there will be some casualties, Fahu gam ben chayel asher libay kalefa aryeh himas yimas. At that point, your whole army will lose its courage. In other words, he's suggesting the point that because David is so fierce, there will at least be some casualties in your small army. Now, there may be a small number of casualties, but that's going to create panic, and that's going to create confusion, because everyone is going to say, David is winning, even if it's not true at the time. And then the heart of your soldiers, even if they are as courageous as a lion, will melt, because everybody knows how mighty your father and his soldiers are. So I would not recommend a stealth attack with a small group of people. But here is my advice. Overwhelm them with everybody. Take everybody, a huge army that is far, far greater than David himself has. Ki ya'atzti, my advice is, He'asof ye'asef alecha kol Yisrael, midan, from the territory of Dan, which is all the way in the north, ad Beersheba, till Beersheba, which is in the south. That's the famous biblical expression, from north to south, Dan to Beersheba. Bring a group, kechayel asher al sfas hayam l'rov, that is as many as the sand on the sea, on the shore of the sea. Upanecha ha'olchim ekrav, and in addition, he says, and you, Avshalom, should be in the army, because that will give them courage. When we come with overwhelming force, v'nachnu alav, and we will camp against him, kasher yipol atal lo adama. It'll be like the dew attaching itself to the earth. The earth cannot protect itself from the dew. The dew is going to be there. We will cover them like the tal. And we have such massive numbers that there will not be a single survivor. V'im el ir Yosef, v'ishiu kol Yisrael el ir ahi chavolim. And if by chance somebody, David or someone else, a loyalist, escapes to a city, we will then have all of Am Yisrael to surround that city with a rope, and we'll put a rope on this person. If it be David, we will drag him to the river. Ad asher lo nimtza sham gam tzuror, and we will destroy that city until there is not even a pebble left in the city. So essentially, Hushai is advocating massive, massive force. Now, that may sound like a good idea, and in point of fact, it's not a good idea, because that massive force is going to give David much, much advance warning and enable him to move on, which is actually Hushai's idea. But Hashem wants Avshalom not to be successful, obviously. Vayomer Avshalom v'chol ish Yisrael, and Avshalom, together with the other Ish Yisrael that are with Avshalom, Toiva Atzas Hushai Arkim Yatzas Achisayfel. Hushai has given me better advice than Achisayfel, but the pasuk says that wasn't emes. But Hashem tziva lahafer es atzas Achisayfel atayva. Hashem Bahashgacha arranged that the good advice of Achisophel would be nullified. Laba'avor Havi Hashem El Avshalom Es Hara. Because Hashem wants Avshalom to be killed. David didn't want, but we're going to see that by following Hushai's advice, among other things, Avshalom went to war, and that will be, we're going to see, the indirect cause of Avshalom's death. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bahashgacha kind of took away Avshalom's common sense to ignore the good Eitzah of Achisophel and to follow the Eitzah of Hushai in order to engineer or to orchestrate the bad that will befall Avshalom, namely his death. So now that Hushai knows what the plan is, he's going to get David the advance information. Because remember, Hushai is essentially a spy for David. Vayemer Hushai al Tzadok ve'al Avyasar HaKahanim. Hushai spoke to Tzadok and Avyasar, the two Kahanim, who once again are also spies for David. Chazais v'chazais yuatz Achisophel es Avshalom v'yesiknei Yisrael. Achisophel gave Avshalom the advice that he gave him, but v'chazais yuatz di'ani, but this is the advice I gave him. And Avshalom is going to follow that advice. V'yata shilchu mehera. Send a message to where David is, because they knew where David was. V'agidu leDavid leimar. Number one, there's going to be a huge army against you, and they're going to a certain place where they know that you are. Leave that place immediately. Al talen halayla bi'arvais hamidbar. Do not spend this night in the plains of the Midbar Yehuda, because that's where they're going to look for you. V'gam avor tavor. You shall cross the Yarden. Cross the Yarden going east. Because if you stay there and the army gets you, pen yevula la melech. Perhaps the melech will be swallowed up, destroyed, ulechol ha'am, asheritai, and all of the nation that is with him. So this is what Hushai told Tzadok and Avyasar, and the actual people who are going to communicate that to David. Again, Tzadok and Avyasar themselves can't leave because their absence would be conspicuous, but they have two sons, Yainason, the son of Tzadok, Achimaaz, the son of Avyasar, and they are the ones that are going to be the messengers. V'yahainason v'Achimaaz, who are the children of Tzadok and Avyasar, Aimdim b'Ein Rogel, they are in the town of Ein Rogel. V'holcha hashifcha. So the maidservant will leave Yerushalayim to Ein Rogel, which is right outside of Yerushalayim, and her going back and forth, nobody notices. Higido lahem, she will tell them, v'heim yelchu, and they will go from Ein Rogel v'higidu lemelech David. Ki lo yuchlu leheraot lavo ha'ira, that it wouldn't be possible for Yonasan and Achimaaz to go to Yerushalayim and then get information and leave, because once they're in Yerushalayim, their leaving of the city would be suspicious. So instead of summoning them to go to Tzadok and Avyasar, we send a shifcha out to them, so they will not be entering the city, after which they wouldn't be able to leave. So far so good. But Pasuk Yud Ches says, Vayar Eisam Nar, but some unnamed person, unnamed youth, saw Yonasan and Achimaaz prepared to leave Ein Rogel. Where are they going? Vayaged li Avshalom, and told Avshalom. Vayelchu shneim mehera. Yonasan and Achimaaz left Ein Rogel very quickly. to give David the message. V'yavo Beis Ish v'Bachurim, they came to a man in Bachurim, because that was the place where David was staying. V'lo be'er b'chatzero, the man had a well, apparently an empty well, like a pit, in his chatzer, and he agreed to hide them, because Avshalom is looking for them now. V'tikach ha'isha, and the wife came, Vatifros es hamasach al pnei haber, she covered the be'er with a blanket. Vatishtach ala farifos, and she put grain on top of it. So it didn't look like a well, it looked like a threshing floor. V'lei naida davar. And nobody knew that she was her husband were concealing Yonas and Achimaitz. Vayavo avdei Avshalom Elohisha abaisa. And the servants of Avshalom came to this house because they knew that Yonas and Achimaitz had come to Bachurim and even come to that house. Vayomru, Ayeh Achimaitz v'Yonas, and where is Achimaitz v'Yonas, who we think are sending messages to David? Vataymer lehem Oisha, Avru Michal Mayim, they've already crossed the springs, they've crossed the little rivers. I don't know where they are. Vayavakshu, and the soldiers searched her house. V'lo matza, because they didn't check the well, because the well was covered. V'yashuva Yerushalayim. V'yihi acharei lechtam, after the soldiers of Avshalom had left, v'yalu mi'abe'er, so they climbed out, Tzadok and Achimaitz and Yonasan climbed out of the be'er, out of the pit, v'yelchu v'yagidu lemelech David. And they gave the message to David. David, remember, has not crossed the Yarden yet. The message is to cross the Yarden. That there will be a massive army against you. Vayimru el David. And they said to David, Kumu v'ivru mehera esamayim. Cross the Yarden immediately. Get out of here. Ki kocha yoatz aleichem Achisaifel. Achisaifel has given an eitz, and now this is shver, because the eitz of Achisaifel is not going to be carried out. It's the eitz of Hushai. But I think here what it means is that it was Achisaifel who came up with the idea of waging war to kill David. Yeah, Hushai changed the details of it. But the sakana is because of Achisaifel. So now, David is going to cross the Yarden and actually leave Eretz Yisrael. Vayokam, he's leaving Eretz Yisrael, but he is entering the land of Ruvain, Gad, and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, most of whom are loyalists to Avshalom, or even to Shaul, perhaps. Vayokam David Chalam Sharitai, and David gets up with all the people that are with him. Vayavru et HaYarden, they crossed the Yarden. Ad or habayker, it took them all night. Ad achad lo nadar, not a single person was left behind. Asher loy avar es hayarden. And now we have a little interruption. Parentheses. Achisaifel saw that his advice was no longer being followed. And Achisaifel was great enough and smart enough to understand that this is min Hashem, that his good advice, which could have killed David, was not going to be followed. And therefore he knew that David would have a nitzachon. And he knew that he would be killed as a Merid b'Malchus. He also realizes, there are different ways of understanding it, that he's no longer the top guy, even with Avshalom. So, for these different reasons, both in anticipation of David coming back, and the fact that even under Avshalom, he is no longer nechshav, so a very unusual step. V'yachbash esachamor, he saddled his donkey. V'yokam v'yelech al beisai, he went home. El Irai, to his city. V'yitzav el beisai, he gave it savah, he gave a will, he distributed his property. V'yechonek, and he strangled himself, he committed suicide. Vayomas, and he died. Vayikaver bekever aviv, and he was buried in the family kever of his father, of his family. So now, this is really the beginning of the end, because Achisaiphel was very wise, and for whatever reason he took his life, either because he sees David will be menatseach, or his ego it crushes him when he realizes he's not the number one miyayetz. Avshalom has now lost his primary source of guidance and hadracha. Yeah, he still has Chushai, but Chushai is really not working for him. Chushai is working for David. So they cross the Yarden. V'David ba Machanayim. David comes to Machanayim. Machanayim, remember, was the first place when Yaakov was coming to Eretz Yisrael. Machanayim is when he was leaving Chutz La'aretz going to Eretz Yisrael. David comes to Machanayim. And Avshalom is pursuing him. Avshalom avras Yarden hu v'chol ish Yisraelim. Avshalom crossed the Yarden. Now, v'yes Amasa, some Avshalom tachas Yoav al Atzava. Now, Yoav, of course, went with David. So Avshalom had to have his own general. And the general that Avshalom put on the army was a man called Amasa. Now, here we have the yichus of Amasa, which is a little complicated. It says, who was Amasa? Amasa ben Ish. Amasa was the son, so Ish, son of a man, that's an obvious statement, but ben Ish means the son of a very eminent chashuv person, Ushmo, and the name of that chashuv person was called Yisra HaYisraeli, which can actually mean Yisra, more than a Yisraeli, meaning a Jew plus, a very righteous person. And Asher Ba El Avigal, not Abigail, and Yisra had married Avigal, right? So Amasa is the son of Yisra and Avigal. Okay, fine. And who is Avigal? Avigal is Bas Nachash, the daughter of a man called Nachash. Now, we've actually had before, Nachash was the name of an Ammonite king, etc. But Chazal actually say that Nachash is a kinoi for Yishai. Yishai is called Nachash because the Gemara in Bava Basra says that Yishai was a perfect tzaddik, and Yishai only died because of the chait of the Eitz Hadas that was caused by the Nachash. So it turns out, if Nachash is Yishai, Avigal is a daughter of Yishai. So Yisra married a daughter of Yishai and had Amasa. And then it goes on and says, and this is really a raya to Chazal, that Avigal was Achais Tzeruya. Avigal was the sister of Tzeruya, which makes perfect sense because Tzeruya is another daughter of Yishai, and Tzeruya is Aim Yoav. So it turns out that Yoav and Avishai are the sons of Tzeruya. Amasa is the son of Avigal. They are cousins, and they are also cousins to Avshalom himself, who is the son of David. So, it turns out that the son of Avigal is Avshalom's general, and the son of Tzeruya is David's general. Okay, be it as it may, Vayichan Yisrael v'Avshalom Eretz HaGilad. The Klal Yisrael that was with Avshalom, they're encamping in Gilad. Gilad is the general name for east of the Yarden. Vayhi kavay David Machanayim. And when David came to Machanayim, that is where David is encamping. Remember, this is east of the Yarden. So different people come forward to take care of him and his people. V'shayvi ben Nachash. Now this is the non-Jewish Nachash. So the Nachash of Pasuk Chaf Zayin is not the same as the Nachash of Pasuk Chaf Hey. Shayvi is the son of Nachash, Mirabas ben Amain, from Rabas, which is the capital of Amain. So he's a non-Jew that brings things to David. Umachir ben Amiel, Miloi Devar, that's a city. And Barzilai Hagiladi Mereglim, right? These are two Jewish people. So 3 people become benefactors of David HaMelech, and they bring him mishkav, they bring him mattresses, v'sapais, and they bring him various kalim like cups and plates and basins, chlei yaitzer, things that were made by artisans, and they bring him chitim usaorim, wheat and barley, v'kemach and flour, v'kali is parched grains, upul v'adoshim and beans and lentils, the kali, and again, it repeats kali again, it's a little bit of a difficulty, but here it seems to be that the first kali is parched grain and the second is parched beans, udavash, honey, chema can either be butter or cream, tzayin, sheep that can be shechted, ushvais bakar, and cattle, higishu leDavid v'la'am, they bring David and the people, asherita lecho, ki amru, because they said, ha'am ra'ev v'ayef, the people are hungry and tired, v'tzamei, and thirsty, b'midbar, because of their wanderings in the midbar. Again, when we learn the book of Malachim, we will go over this. We will find that at least Barzilai Hagiladi is specifically singled out for special chesed on David's deathbed. For some reason, the other 2 are not mentioned. Again, we'll go over that later. But Barzilai Hagiladi is considered to be a very, very great benefactor of David HaMelech. Shimi ben Gera, who cursed David, is treated the opposite way. Okay, so that is the end of Perek Yud Zayin.